So today I would like to talk about a particular technique that many violinists struggle with: chords. In particular, chords that involve more than two notes at the same time. So triple stops or quadruple stops, if you'd like to call them that. And over the many years that I've had teaching the violin, I've noticed that many violinists find themselves hindered by the limitations of the instrument. We believe that because of the curvature of the bridge, we cannot play a 4-note chord playing all notes at the same time. And so while we get something like this on the score, it generally ends up sounding like this. And even though up until today that has more or less become the norm, and that's generally the way that most violinists play these kinds of passages, I believe we have to find a way to overcome the limitations of the instrument to get as close as possible to the idea of the composer. Now, for those of you who are new, my name is Gabriel. I'm the founder of Toaldo Violin School based in Tokyo, Japan, where for the past 7 years I've been teaching and helping violinists of all ages and all levels master the violin technique and become the best violinists they can be. And so if you'd like to learn more, feel free to subscribe, and as always, if you'd like to learn even more and even have the opportunity to work with me directly, then you can go ahead and follow us on our school community. You'll find the link in the description down below. Now, what if I told you there's a new way to master your violin? Now, as you might know, there's many people out there who actually learn how to play the violin by following simple YouTube tutorials without a clear structure. And the problem with this, even though there's many great things out there, is that you end up following content that ultimately doesn't take you anywhere. And you're left stuck, overwhelmed, frustrated, and ultimately feeling like you cannot do it by yourself. So let me introduce you to the new way, the FTM system. Now, this system is superior because it's built on 3 main pillars: your foundational technique, your technical repertoire, and your musical repertoire, giving you a clear roadmap that shows you what to practice, when to practice, and how to get to your objective. And if you knew what steps to follow when you practice at home with a proven system, you'd improve 10 times faster. And for me, after teaching hundreds of students both in Europe and Asia, and ultimately creating my own violin school in Tokyo, Japan, where I help violinists of all ages and all levels become the best violinists they can be, I've proven this system works. So stop following random tutorials and start using the FTM system. If you'd like to learn more, comment new down below and I'll share the system personally with you. Now, the main issue with chords is that many of us tend to play the chord in 2 separate parts, first playing the bottom 2 notes and then the top 2 notes, because of the layout of the violin and just the natural limitations of the instrument. We could not, in all truth, be able to play all 4 notes together unless we somehow modify the violin or the bow to be able to do it. And so we actually end up with something like this. But that's a broken chord, and even though it's a legitimate way to play chords and it's an actual musical technique, it's what we call an arpeggiated chord. And so it's something entirely different. But what if there was an actual way that could allow you to play your chords in a much more unified way, and all it took was a slight shift in your approach? Well, it turns out there is such a way, and it's something that I found very useful throughout my entire career as a violinist, and all you need to do is actually stop thinking about playing 2 and then 2, and start thinking about playing 3 and 3. Now, that does mean there's going to be a slight overlap because you'll actually be repeating those middle notes when you do 3 and 3, but the fact that you're unifying everything much more gives the entire chord a much more well-rounded and deeper character. And so your chords go from something like this to something like this. But now, in order to do that, and in order to do it the right way, we have to talk about triple stops. Now, that's an entirely different technique. It goes a little bit beyond double stops, but fortunately, I have a great exercise that's going to help you with that, and so I'm going to share it with you right now. Now, when you're working on your triple stops, the main thing you have to remember is that you'll actually be aiming for that middle string on your violin, and you don't want to change the angle of the bow. You want to keep your bow straight at all times and always aim for that middle string. So if you're playing, for example, a chord that involves your G, D, and A strings, you want to have your bow at a D angle, right? So that you're playing only your D string. And then little by little, what I'd like you to try is actually adding a little bit more and more weight every time without changing the angle of the bow until you start almost as if by mistake engaging the other two strings. And so that looks something like this. And so as you can see here, my bow is always completely flat, completely at the same angle. I'm not turning around the bridge to play the other strings, and I'm still engaging with all three strings at the same time. And I'm doing all that by virtue of just giving more weight to the bow. Now, what I mean by that is that I'm not going to force the bow down onto the string, but actually just relax on the bow so that I can transmit the weight of my arm onto the bow and thus dig a little bit deeper into the string. If you start adding pressure or force or tension, that's going to break the sound entirely, and it just defeats the purpose of this exercise. So remember to keep a very relaxed posture, relaxed arms at all time. Now, once you get the hang of that, I'd like you to try going over this exercise right here, which is a Sevcik study, or actually part of a Sevcik study that focuses precisely on triple stops. And so we're going to take just the first few notes, and like I mentioned just a moment ago, we're going to start focusing only on the middle note, and then little by little adding more weight and more weight until we can actually engage all three strings. So that means you're actually going to be repeating each bar multiple times, and then once you're comfortable with that, we move on to the next one. So that goes a little bit something like this. So once you get the hang of that, you can also go ahead and try different bow strokes, like all up bow or just combining down, up, down, up. But keep in mind that going up bow is going to be always a little bit more challenging because up bow strokes are lighter than down bow strokes. But by all means, you also need to develop that. So go ahead and give that a try too. But like I said, the most important point is that your bow needs to remain flat and at the same angle all throughout this exercise so that you can develop your triple stops. And then that would take your chords from being just two broken chords, or rather one chord broken two, to actually a much rounder chord, closer to what the composer wrote initially. And so when it comes to things like playing those famous chords in the first movement of Bruch Concerto, you'll find that if you play them like this, it will give them a much rounder and reverberating character. So go ahead and give that exercise a try. If you'd like to have the score, you can join our school community and you'll find the score in there as well. So you'll find the link in the description down below. Let me know in the comments how it goes, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And in the meantime, take care, and I'll see you next time.